The ghost boy takes a step into the cold void of the temple, and behind him, the survivors stumble into the darkness. They trample over the wreckage of heavy doors, clutching their scythes and hoes with white-knuckled grips. Inside the sanctum, the air smells not of incense, but of frozen blood and ancient stone. The darkness here is cloying, almost tangible, but the lad sees it differently, through the crimson flares of an alien consciousness pulsing somewhere ahead. He feels the beast stirring in the bowels of the shrine. It is not merely movement, it is the awakening of malice itself. The destroyer sleeps no more. Its rage flares like coal doused in rendered fat. The boy grips the bone hilt of the blade, feeling a prickling sensation run across his fingers, his own gift responding to the proximity of the enemy. From the gloom comes a low, vibrating growl that makes Jackton's crossbow tremble, while Agnieszka begins to cross herself in a frenzy. And then it manifests. The abomination sweeps out from behind the altar like a black whirlwind. It is massive, unnaturally gaunt and elongated, covered in scars and the remnants of something that might once have been armor. The boy sees jagged claws screeching against the flagstones, striking sparks. The beast lunges. Jackton's pulls the trigger, the bolt whistling into the dark, but the creature sidesteps with such speed it seems to phase out of reality and re-emerge meters to the left. The monster's first strike falls upon Pardreg. The smith's son does not even have time to scream. A clawed limb slams into his chest, hurling the giant against a pillar. There is the dry crunch of bone, and Pardreg's body slides down, leaving a greasy smear upon the rock. The beast throws its head back and unleashes a scream that assaults not the ears, but the sanity itself. Tivoli drops to his knees, clapping hands over his ears as blood begins to stream from his nose. "Stand fast! Do not run!" the boy bellows, and his voice rings with a power he had previously feared to use. He does not simply shout, he strikes out with his will, erecting an invisible barrier between the humans and this embodiment of nightmare. The beast freezes for a heartbeat, its eyes, two slits filled with burning ash, locking on to the child. The beast senses a kindred power, senses the one who drinks its dreams. It leaps again, this time aiming straight for the lad. The boy does not dodge. He thrusts his hand forward with the blade and simultaneously unleashes the taint he had been told for years to conceal. The air around him crackles and smells of ozone. A psionic hammer blow slams into the beast's chest, arresting its flight. The creature rears up, its spine arching at an impossible angle, howling in pain inflicted not by steel, but by pure thought. In that moment, Jackton's manages to reload his crossbow and lodges a bolt in the monster's shoulder. Agnieszka, maddened by terror, hurls her heavy needles at the enemy, and one miraculously sinks into the beast's snout. The destroyer is enraged. It crushes the nearest pew with a swipe of its paw, turning wood into splinters, and with a tail studded with bone spikes, it sweeps the woodcutter from his feet. The boy feels his strength draining, feels how every movement of the beast leeches the life from him, yet he advances. He presses forward, the blade in his hand shining with the deathly pale light of the Night Trinity. The beast backs towards the altar, beneath the holy Aquila, which looks down indifferently upon the slaughter. "You will not take them," the lad whispers, and all hear it, for the voice resonates directly within their skulls. He leaps forward, closing the distance. The beast thrusts, claws passing inches from the boy's face, shredding his tunic. In response, the lad drives the blade beneath the creature's ribs. He feels the silvery steel sink into flesh that burns like molten lead. The creature shudders, its blood, black and viscous, spraying on the boy's face, searing his skin. In this moment, their minds merge completely. The boy sees stars, sees infinite blackness and fire. He witnesses the death of worlds and realizes that this beast is but a splinter of something far more terrible. But he does not let this knowledge break him. He twists the dagger. The creature thrashes in agony, smashing through the altar railing, bringing the sanctuary down around them. The boy is thrown aside, striking the stones, and for a moment, the world goes black. When he opens his eyes, silence reigns in the church, broken only by the rasping breath of the survivors. The beast lies as a heap of black meat at the foot of the ruined altar. Its limbs still twitch, but the fire in its eyes is extinguishing. The lad rises, wiping the black ichor from his face. He looks at Agnieszka, at the huddled Tivoli, at Jackdens, who is trying to stand while clutching broken ribs. Padraig is dead. The others look at the boy with even greater fear than before, for now they have seen not merely a ghost, but a witch in action. "We need to leave," he repeats the same phrase with which it all began. He understands that this is only the beginning, that the music he heard sang not of peace, but of eternal war. But for now, he simply retrieves his blade, which has grown cold and quiet once more. He leads them out, away from the temple that failed to protect them, into the cold night of the far wilds, where the light of 3 moons still illuminates the path amidst the corpses. The wayfarer struggles out of the dense, thorny thickets and freezes, blinded by the sudden light of a dim, sickly yellow sun that seems ailing to him, as if the very soil of this region has poisoned the celestial sphere. He stands, hunched beneath a heavy pack in his tattered white coat of syntheskin, and feels the frost biting through the filthy fabric as he surveys the ravaged settlement in the hollow below. The image of Euryale surfaces in the wayfarer's memory, the artist from the subterranean labyrinth of the Scrutotheca, whose face with the third eye tattoo and whose blue silks he cannot forget. He recalls their meeting in the capital of Charlemagne, recalls her grim canvases featuring orchids blooming from the corpses of rats, and remembers how she drove a needle into his palm, collecting a blood tithe for passage into the Reverie. The Reverie is no place for old souls, he remembers her warning. The wayfarer recalls his entire long route, from the glittering starport of Malpertuis to this frozen backwater of the far wilds, reached by maglevs, land haulers, and even a wain, feeling civilization sloughing off him layer by layer. He remembers how the navigational instruments, all those auspexes and triangulators, went mad the moment he entered the forest, leaving him alone with quotes from the Codex of the Radiant. Now he sees before him a mill resembling a sepulchral obelisk and a cluster of rotting hovels dominated by the stone spire of a church. The wayfarer narrows his eyes, peering into the empty windows, and suddenly catches a flash of movement in one of them, as if a luminous silhouette had swept across the room. He feels that this place is steeped in corruption, that it is insidious and dangerous, and that the hovels only feign immobility, while in truth they are ready to reach out to him with gap-toothed plank claws. Despite the encroaching night and the terrible cold, he speaks aloud to Euryale, resolving not to enter this hamlet. "It is poisoned, Euryale," he whispers, convinced of his rectitude. The wayfarer turns his back to the village and retreats into the dark forest thicket, deciding it is better to face the frost in the woods than to treat with the ghosts in those desecrated homes. He walks forward without looking back, certain that there are some things upon which one simply must not gaze. The shadows around him thicken, becoming almost tangible. The wayfarer reluctantly touches the rim of his safety goggles, switching them to night vision mode. The world instantly transforms. The impenetrable gloom retreats, replaced by a pale greenish facsimile. The wayfarer quickens his pace. He walks through the thicket, looking for any clearing where he might pitch his climate tent. He does not trust his optics. Before, they served faithfully, but here, in the Reverie, they have begun to glitch. The image distorts, ripples. The device shuts down on its own, as if the battery were dead, though he changed it quite recently. Both flashlights died in the first days, and the expensive lumen injector from Charlemagne broke as well. Logic does not work here. If the goggles fail, he will remain blind, for he never managed to start a fire from the damp wood. I wasn't ready for this, he admits to himself. He had prepared himself for monsters, for mutants, for the struggle against his own madness, which one could fight off or flee from. But he was not ready for this void. The forest is a sterile purgatory. There are no birds here, no rodents. The plants look artificial, apathetic. But the most terrible thing is the silence. The sounds of footsteps, the cracking of branches, the whistling of the wind, everything sounds muffled, wrong. To keep from going mad and forgetting how to speak, he constantly mutters, addressing Uriel, establishing norms of speech for himself. He has been trudging for weeks, perhaps months, awaiting a trial, but nothing happens. Suddenly, the wayfarer trips over an obstacle hidden beneath the snow. He has no time to brace himself and falls, striking his head hard against a tree trunk. A crack resounds. The greenish glow in the goggles flares one last time and dies. Total darkness ensues. He lies there waiting for the device to reboot, but in vain. He flicks the switch once, twice, nothing. His head splits with pain. He tears off the useless goggles and falls to his knees, praying for light. In this darkness, a vision overtakes him. Uriel's voice sounds in his head, mocking, and then reality shifts. He sees himself in the past, pumped full of the narcotic morning kiss. He lies on the floor, and above him stands a blurred figure, the stranger. This phantom tells him he is safe, but it is safety that kills his soul. The wayfarer argues in delirium, claiming that souls do not exist, but feels a deep sorrow. The stranger places something in his hand and orders him to open his eyes. Tarsem opens his eyes in the forest. To the left, amongst the trees, a dim reddish light flickers. His first thought, it is a monster from that dead village. It has tracked him down, but he chases away the fear. He clutches the wooden aquila at his neck, the symbol of the emperor, his anchor in reality. He begins to whisper the prayer of the winged eye. The angel ascends from noble hearts. The words give him strength. He rises and walks toward the light. He emerges into a small clearing. A fire burns there. Before the fire, sitting cross-legged, is a figure in a hooded robe. "May I warm myself by your fire?" the wayfarer asks. The figure does not answer and does not move. The flame dyes the white fabric of the robe in ochre. The wanderer approaches closer and realizes the creature is immense. Even sitting, it looks down on him. The shoulders are incredibly broad. This is not merely a human. This is an Adeptus Astartes, a space marine, a being created by biosorcery for war, inspiring awe on a primal level. "Forgive my intrusion," Tarsem says. "Sit." A deep voice resonates, drowning out the noise of the wind. The wayfarer drops his pack and sits opposite, stretching his stiffened hands toward the fire. He lost his gloves long ago.
He looks at the giant and remains silent, awaiting judgment. Knowledge he has hoarded for years races through his head. This is one of the sons of Sanguinius. He recalls legends of traitor space marines, but drives these thoughts away. My name is Tarsem. I am a wayfarer. We are all wayfarers here. Such is the nature of this place, Tarsem weighed. The wanderer flinches. The giant knows his surname, which he had cast aside along with his past life. He realizes before him is not just a warrior, but a psyker, a librarian, or, as the Radiant call them, a radiant architect. You are a radiant architect, Tarsem exhales. The giant lifts his head. His face is smooth, pale, clean, but deep wrinkles lie around his colorless eyes. I have thoroughly studied the history of your brotherhood, Tarsem continues, trying to speak firmly. They speak of age and privilege. The architect sees right through him. Tarsem is a scion of a wealthy family, an Omir, a ninth son to whom everything was permitted. He did not renounce his wealth, but used it to gather knowledge about the angel and find the path here. He speaks of his connection to the Society of the Winged Eye, of the belief that Sanguinius could have led humanity to a new era. Why have you come? The architect asks, and violet lightning flashes in his eyes. I do not seek to become one of you, Tarsem answers honestly. I want to share your faith. I want to preach it. The fire slowly burns out. The conversation is over. The giant speaks no further word, and Tarsem, exhausted by the trek and the shock, settles down to sleep right on the ground by the embers. But before falling into slumber, he dares to ask a final question. May I know your name, architect? A long silence. Then, from the darkness, comes the answer. I am no longer an architect. I have renounced, as have you. Now, I am simply a ghost. My name is Satori.
The darkness in the forest thickens, and the wayfarer switches his safety goggles to night vision mode, painting the world in green. But the technology glitches, flickers, and dies, leaving him blind, for he never learned to kindle a fire. He stumbles on by touch, talking to himself lest he forget human speech, but eventually trips over an obstacle hidden beneath the snow, falls, and strikes his head against a tree with a sickening crack, slipping into oblivion. In this darkness, visions of the past come to him, narcotic delirium, an overdose of morning kiss, a voice insisting on a safety that kills the soul, and a wooden aquila pressed into his hand. Then he comes to, already within the forest of the Reverie. He sees a red light and walks toward it, emerging into a clearing with a campfire. By the fire sits a hulking figure in a robe, revealed to be an Adeptus Astartes, a demigod of war. The wayfarer, introducing himself as Tarsem Wade, learns that this giant is a psyker, an architect who knows everything about him, including his wealthy lineage and his desire to preach the faith. Yet the giant calls himself a ghost named Satori. From that moment, their shared journey begins, turning into a routine. Every morning, Satori leaves Tarsem water and gray, tasteless ration cubes, leading him along strange routes, sometimes freezing in place or abruptly changing direction. One day, he explains that the settlement of Vindarnus, which Tarsem sees in his dreams, is a wound in the world, the maw of the Reverie, where a great evil came to pass. They emerge at the wide, dark river Tristesse, its banks lined with ice. Satori says this is the only way out, toward the outpost. As they walk along the shore, Tarsem notices a pale face in the water, but remains silent. Ahead, a stone tower appears, wreathed in thorny briars, with an attached boat hangar. Satori touches a sensor panel beneath a statue. The hatch opens, and they enter, greeted by the smell of damp wood. Inside the tower, lights burn. Satori orders Tarsem to touch nothing and leaves to check the boats in the hangar, leaving the wayfarer alone in a room filled with crude wooden figurines hanging from the ceiling and standing on shelves. Tarsem picks one up and sees it is a grotesque, faceless creature with a single huge eye made of many concentric circles. He stares into the black pupil. The figurine blinks, and Tarsem is hurled out of reality, straight back into that nightmare in the church. He becomes the ghost boy again at the moment of the slaughter. A massive knight in orange armor with gold inlay and claw blades on his gauntlets stands amidst the temple. Tarsem sees the noble symbol of the radiant on his chest, realizing this is betrayal, that all the legends were lies. The monster charges, and the butchery begins. Bearded Yaktens tries to fire his crossbow, but the beast lowers his claws, cleaving the man from crown to waist so that the halves of his body fall apart. A stocky lad strikes the monster with a spade, but the blade shatters against the ceramite, and with a second swipe of his claws, the creature takes off his head, which flies past Tarsem with a frozen look of surprise. Old Agnieszka rushes in with her needle, but the beast cuts off her arm at the elbow with impossible speed and rips open her belly, spilling her entrails. Tarsem is thrown back by a blow, smashing his head against the floor. He hears pleas and wet crunch of tearing flesh. When he rises, he sees the night beast kneeling amidst the corpses, sparking claws dug into the stone. The boy Tarsem, filled with fury and faith, screams, "Traitor!" marching on the monster with his shining dagger. The beast looks at him with weeping, bloody eyes and admits his guilt. With a howl, the boy throws himself forward, driving the blade straight into the monster's right eye, piercing the brain to the hilt, and leaps back. The knight roars. White flame erupts from his maw and eyes. He falls upon the altar, but the fire is replaced by an iridescent, unholy light and a maddening crystalline music that tears reality asunder. Tarsem wakes in the upper room of the observation tower, clutching the wooden idol in his hand, and sees that he is not alone. By the window, with its back to him, sits a colossal entity in faded, cracked blue armor, from which yellowish roots and flesh protrude like a fungus. One arm has transformed into a long tentacle, the legs have become knotty outgrowths, and when the creature turns, Tarsem sees that instead of a face, it has a gigantic mirrored eye, exactly like the one on the wooden figurines. The mutant makes no sound, it simply shifts in space, vanishing and reappearing right in front of the wayfarer's face, its vast iris dilating, preparing to consume the human mind. Ureli's voice in his head asks if this is what he sought. Tarsem screams no in terror and rushes to the spiral staircase to escape, but slips on the steps and falls into the darkness.
Tarsem opens his eyes and sees the forest in flux. Interwoven tree crowns rush past above him, driven by the gale, and a blizzard rages all around, yet the snowflakes do not touch his face. He feels a dull ache in his body and realizes he is alive, but he cannot move. The sky above him is going mad, shifting in flashes. Now it is an ashen smog choking the twin suns. Now a crystalline lattice pulsing with indigo light, within which dart gleaming discs. Uriel's voice sounds in his head again, whispering that his journey has no end, that he seeks perfect answers but will find only an eternal fall. Tarsem argues with her in his mind, asserting that he will become an architect, a builder, but her voice disintegrates, turning into the steady thrum of a motor and the splashing of water. The wayfarer realizes he is lying in a boat. The immense silhouette of Satori looms over him. The giant warns Tarsem not to move, for his body is broken, and informs him that they have been sailing downriver for 2 days and will soon emerge into the open. Tarsem looks at the forest, which now resembles a cluster of gray-green rotting fungi, and a sudden epiphany pierces him. He realizes that the boy from the nightmare in the church, the one who killed the night beast, is Satori. "It is your nightmare. It was always yours," Tarsem exhales. Satori does not deny it. The giant's memories had seeped into Tarsem's consciousness. Gathering his last reserves of strength, the wayfarer asks the single question that has tormented him since the vision. How did the boy stop that insane, reality-shattering music that poured from the beast's corpse? "I did not stop it," the architect answers quietly. "I gave it a voice." As Tarsem drifts back into sleep, Satori stands at the prow of the boat. It is an elegant vessel equipped with anti-grav modules that disperse the snow, speeding along the river under the guidance of a cogitator. The giant knows that there is a hidden gift within Tarsem. He is an empath and a psyker, though it is yet unknown whether his scales will tilt toward good or evil. Satori's thoughts drift to the distant past, to the very day they came for him. In his memories, he becomes the boy again, kneeling beside the corpse of the traitor Hanzo Giger in the ruined church. 5 giants appear, the Radiant. 4 are clad in orange armor, but their commander, the Silver Mask, is encased in dark blue, almost black plate, his head concealed by a hood studded with crystals. The commander issues a harsh order to search the village and purge all survivors so that word of their brother's madness does not leave these ruins. Witnesses do not matter. Then the Silver Mask descends before the boy. His helm opens to reveal the wrinkled face of a blind seer with an inverted pyramid tattooed on his forehead. He mentally scans the child, invading his mind with cold tendrils, and delivers his verdict: there is no taint. Chief Librarian Zoran Castañeda, for that is the commander's name, offers the boy a chance to leave with them and walk the path of light within the shadows. The boy agrees immediately, reciting the motto, "We shall soar upon burning wings." In the present, Satori, standing at the prow of the boat, watches the approaching rapids. He knows the enemy is already here, that the ancient song is sounding once more, seducing new souls, but this time he swears he will not permit what happened in the past to occur again. The boat hurtles towards Convolis, the shining citadel, and Satori is ready to meet his destiny. Marisol rests her palm upon her companion's wrist, encased in gold, and her hand reaches only the level of his head. They stand upon a circular platform within a transparent observation blister protruding from the hull of the starship Persistence of Design like a gemstone, gazing down on the emerald green hemisphere of the planet Malpertuis. The giant remains silent. His golden power armor is adorned with a purple cloak and stylized wings upon the pauldrons, while his black hair is bound by a circlet featuring an amethyst rose. This is Dariko Graal,
Knight Exemplar, commander of the battle rhapsody of the Radiant. Marisol, his muse and keeper of memory, dressed in the simple blue livery of a servant, asks if he is not glad to return home. Dariko is immersed in somber reflection. He admits that the painted world is beautiful, yet he is troubled by the chapter's coming judgment. He fears they will deem him an unworthy successor to the fallen Yukio Caravaggio, whom he considers flawless. Marisol attempts to console him, reminding him that he was chosen as the best among them, but the warrior offers only a sad smile. Suddenly, his mood shifts. He casts aside his doubt and becomes the imperious Varzaval Cervantes once more. He declares that he wishes to show Marisol his completed work before they disembark and leads her away, promising wonders. Meanwhile, in the ship's vast marble hibernaculum, synthesized music thunders. Tech Marine Ennio Zan stands upon a hovering octagonal dais, conducting the awakening process like a symphony. His 12-fingered hands, resembling mechanical spiders, skitter across control panels, while bundles of mechadendrites connect him to servo skulls fluttering about the hall. Below, hundreds of serfs and servitors extract cryosarcophagi from their niches, disengage systems, and load them onto grav sleds that immediately ferry the sleepers to the hangar. Zan works with inhuman speed, perceiving the death of weak sleepers merely as an error in the equation to be deleted for the sake of preserving harmony. He sees this operation as the highest form of worship to the Omnisia, ordered chaos. At the entrance to this churning bay stands apothecary Juan Borges in white armor. He watches Zan's haste with disapproval, realizing the Tech Marine is risking lives for the sake of his own vanity. A sled passes by, and Borges recognizes the sleeping youth as Nico Sharps, one of those who survived the cold trials. The apothecary reflects that 219 souls is a meager catch for such a long voyage, but such is the way of the noble harvest. Sergeant Satoshi Atienza approaches Borges. This warrior cuts an exotic figure, a topknot on his crown, beast pelts at his waist, and the image of a rainbow dragon on his pauldron. Atienza openly expresses his discontent. He asks if the commander knows what is transpiring here, and mockingly remarks that the commander is likely cooling his heels with his muse or painting pictures, while his tin sycophant, Zan, plays with the lives of recruits. The sergeant gets to the point. He informs Borges that the vault sergeants are preparing a petition to the chapter master against Varzaval Cervantes, deeming him an impostor who has led them down a false path. Atienza demands that Borges lend his voice to their cause. The apothecary tries to evade the answer, but the sergeant presses him, calling the situation critical, and departs, leaving Borges in turmoil. In the hangar bay, Marisol stands by the lowered ramp of a transport shuttle. She tries to coax another muse, a girl named Lisbeth, to board. Lisbeth looks ghastly. Her hair is fiery red, and her pupils are dilated to the limit from the drug Mecturi. She is frozen at the ramp, staring into the void, and asks why the citadel of Canvolis sparkles at night. Marisol begins to explain about the crystals in the walls, but Lisbeth abruptly interrupts her. The girl asserts that it is not about crystals, but about fear. She whispers that the Radiant fear the night, that they invented the light to hold back the darkness. Marisol, irritated and weary, suggests Lisbeth stay behind if she does not wish to fly. In response, the girl turns to her and smiles a grim smile, full of hopelessness. "Don't be silly," Lisbeth says. "That won't work. It never works." Humming to herself, the mad muse hops onto the ramp and ascends into the shuttle, leaving Marisol watching her retreat with unease.
Vorzaval Cervantes stands in the center of his personal gallery before the final painting, completed just prior to achieving orbit. The canvas depicts the pilgrim, a figure walking through a storm, a symbol of trials upon the mirror path. This time, the pilgrim wears the face of Marisol, his muse, but Vorzaval realizes with horror that he has turned her into a monster. The ferocious ambition of the painted gaze disfigures the woman's serene features. The warrior turns away from the canvas, whispers an apology, and approaches the far wall where the largest painting hangs. On it, the pilgrim, in the guise of a knight exemplar, strides with flaming hands, and his face is that of Ukiyo Caravaggio, Vorzaval's predecessor and friend. Cervantes speaks the password, an old battle cry and antiphon of the Rhapsody. We burn that others may live. In death, embraced by flame, we shine eternally. The lock clicks, and the panel bearing the painting slides aside, revealing a metal-reinforced doorway and a staircase descending steeply into the dark. Vorzaval descends into the secret sanctum. Along the walls, cogitators hum, and in the center of the room stands a hermetic sphere of glass, steel, and metal beams, coated in patterns of frost. Inside the cage sits a naked prisoner. Flanking the sphere, two massive battle servitors with melta-guns stand frozen, ready to incinerate the cell's contents. Cervantes crosses the room and stands before a primitive control console with 3 red levers. The prisoner, filthy, with long matted hair, presses his palms against the glass. It is Ukiyo Caravaggio. He begs him not to do this. Don't, there is no need. But Vorzaval replies that he must. Ukiyo says he feels the return home and the awakening of the reverie. He claims that they are both still walking the mirror path and that reality is an illusion. A fit of pain seizes Vorzaval as if an ice spike is twisting inside his skull. He pulls the first lever. The hum in the hall intensifies. Ukiyo's eyes snap open and his irises flash with violet light like poisoned stars. He calls out for them to fight together, but Vorzaval answers that it is too late and lowers the second lever. The prisoner begins to change. His fingers elongate, sprouting new joints, nails tapping against the glass in search of an exit. Blinking eyes, weeping blood cut open on Ukiyo's palms and neck, and a vertical eye splits open in his forehead. "I have ascended," the mutant screams, claiming to follow in the footsteps of the first master. Vorzaval reaches for the third lever with a trembling hand. Blood flows from his nose and eyes. Ukiyo bares shark-like fangs, his hands transforming into chitinous claws and tentacles, teasing Vorzaval, saying that the pilgrim is already here. "Remember," the creature screams, and Vorzaval's world collapses into a single point. He is thrown into the past. He is young Dariok Grawl again, one of the aspirants, trudging through the snow-swept old forest with a group of comrades led by Andre, the future Ukiyo. They are hungry, exhausted, and unarmed, for Andre had convinced them not to take swords or pistols, relying only on resolution. The group stumbles upon an abandoned village that seems strangely untouched by the forest's rot. Pious Oswald senses blight and evil, suggesting they bypass the place. Dariok agrees. He feels the village is hiding something, but Andre insists this is a test and they must enter to root out the evil. The group moves toward the hovels. At that moment, Dariok looks back and sees a figure in a white hooded robe at the forest edge, watching them. "Pilgrim," he whispers the name that comes from nowhere, and the figure vanishes into the thicket. The vision ends abruptly. Vorzaval finds himself standing at the console, his hand gripping the final third lever, but he has not pulled it.
Ukiyo Caravaggio, stripped of all monstrous mutations, lies exhausted on the floor of the cage, glistening with sweat. He looks pathetic, not dangerous. "I am still me," the prisoner whispers, "still your first brother." Varzoval says this is but a shadow, that Ukiyo is lost, but the captive insists that the rhapsody needs him. Cervantes recalls the fallen brothers, Haas, Dolinsky, Benedict, and his hand tenses on the lever of purgation. He is almost ready to execute the traitor, but the memory of the pilgrim in that village give him no peace. It is too real, too true. Ukiyo, as if reading his thoughts, teases him from the floor of the cell. "He is coming for you, this pilgrim of yours."
Canvalis reveals itself to be not merely a fortress, but a gigantic ziggurat city, clutching the cliffs on both banks of the river Tristesse. 6 hexagonal tiers pile upon one another, connected by garlands of stairways and arches, while a titanic water wheel hangs from the foundation, churning beneath the force of the current. At the very summit, arms spread to the sun, stands the silver colossus of the first master, his face invisible. Marisol and the other muses arrive there and are immediately immersed in the surreal life of the stronghold. Along the lower, water-filled level, majestic gondolas ply the surface, piloted by servitors wearing ceramic masks with plumed crests and gemstones in their eye sockets. These dolls smile, bow, and speak in exquisite contraltos, but a cadaverous chill emanates from their beauty. Marisol takes up residence in the estate of the Rhapsody Eternal, an inverted cone of amaranthine stone growing directly out of the lake. There she encounters the local hierarchy, young dancers like the narcissistic balladeer Armando, and the ancient ghouls, elders who abuse juvenat therapy, with stretched skin and hungry eyes. One of them, a creature named Hamartia, wearing a gown and a towering lilac coiffure, questions Marisol about the death of Ukiyo Caravaggio, wiping away imaginary tears. Yet behind this feigned sympathy lies only a thirst for gossip. Varzoval Cervantes arrives 2 days later. He has shed his armor and now wears a doublet of purple velvet. Together with Marisol, they walk through a garden of stone flowers. Varzoval shows her the wonders of the citadel, but looks grim. By a pond of churning water, Marisol notices a figure on the opposite bank, a human in a white robe with a hood. The silhouette shimmers in the haze above the water. The stranger stands motionless, looking straight at them. Marisol asks Varzoval who it is, expecting the captain to call out to his brother, but he merely fixes the figure with an impenetrable gaze. A few seconds later, the observer turns and vanishes behind the granite trees. "Did you see him too?" Varzoval asks distractedly. Marisol demands the truth, but the captain only shakes his head, asserting that it is not who he thought it was, and leads her away toward the waterfall. The next morning, Marisol enters the lounge and stumbles upon Lisbeth. The red-haired girl is behaving strangely. She wanders apathetically in the semi-darkness, humming something under her breath. A sharp smell of resin hangs in the air. Lisbeth says frightening things. "You know, she hears us," the girl utters. "That song, it is louder down here." Lisbeth claims the song likes Marisol because her voice is stronger and sharper. The girl looks ill. She says the song will not let her sleep. Marisol, feeling the walls pressing in on her, hurries to leave, abandoning Lisbeth alone in the gloom of the hall. Marisol decides to explore the estate and ascends to the 3rd floor. There she hears music again, a quiet, soothing melody flowing from a slightly open door. Curiosity takes over, and she enters. The small room smells of incense and unguents. On the bed lies an emaciated young man with copper-red skin, covered with scratches and bruises.
Runes are drawn upon his cheeks, and a tattoo, a winged eye, is visible on his left palm. Marisol approaches and asks aloud who he is. The lad suddenly opens eyes filled with burst vessels. "Euralia? Am I outside?" He immediately slips back into unconsciousness. A voice sounds behind Marisol's back. She spins around to see a stocky man with a gray beard, dressed in a white doublet with purple piping. It is Medike Kwanzo Narayan. He is cheerful and friendly, but when Marisol begins to question him about the patient, something strange occurs. Kwanzo doesn't know the lad's name, calling him Brother Nobody, and cannot recall who transferred this patient to him or when. Upon trying to remember, Kwanzo's face contorts in pain. He clutches his temple, but instantly regains his carefree demeanor, claiming his duty is simply to heal. Marisol returns to the common hall, where she is met by a hum of voices. Hamartia rushes to her, wringing her hands. "A tragedy, darling," the old creature exclaims, and the mechanical fish upon her head flaps its wings. Poor Benoit found her this morning, half reclining in a pool of blood on the Versantine sofa. Lisbeth is dead. She opened her veins with a quill pen. But the ghouls are more concerned with the ruined furniture and the breach of propriety than with the death of the girl. Marisol approaches the sheet-covered body on the sofa and whispers, "Fool." Benoit bursts into the room and begins to sob, turning his lover's death into a scene of his own suffering, claiming his passion was too great for one woman to bear. Feeling disgust for them all, Marisol locks herself in her room. The smell of damp leaves and resin hits her nose again, the very scent that emanated from Lisbeth that morning. She sits at the info panel and begins to type in a frenzy, pouring her anger on the digital page. The words flow in a torrent. She writes that the gift of eternal life is seasoned with betrayal, that it is a box that must not be opened. She writes all night, reveling in her malice and the resinous aroma, and at dawn she erases it all without a trace.
Time drags agonizingly slowly, like melting snow. Varzival Cervantes attempts to paint, but he cannot. The moment he closes his eyes, he sees the abandoned, rotting village from the Reverie, mocking him with its secrets. He yearns to know the truth, but crashes against a mental block stitched into his consciousness by the chapter's hypno-indoctrination. The prohibition against returning to the valley causes physical pain. The captain finds himself at an impasse. He avoids Marisol, fearing he might infect her with his somber mood, and wanders the fortress in solitude, choosing the most exotic galleries. The festivities in honor of the company's return seem hollow to him, and within the city itself he senses an invisible shadow of unease. Canvolis is outwardly perfect, yet Varzival notices frightening oddities. A woman preening before a blank wall, a caretaker in tears polishing the same patch of floor, a curator claiming the gallery has flipped upside down, and a boy swearing he saw space marines in dirty black armor defacing the citadel. Lisbeth's suicide also gives him no peace, but the captain attributes it to the fragility of mortals. He is more concerned by the decay of the Imperium he witnessed on Crusade, and it seems to him that here, on Malpertuis, the city has also begun to ring false. Varzival stops before a massive spiral installation of glass cubes. It shifts color to ochre. The captain mutters that something is coming, recalling the hooded figure by the pond he saw with Marisol. He tries to convince himself it was a paladin, but an inner voice insists, "I know what I saw." The world trembles, and Varzival is hurled into a memory. He is back on the ship, in the quarters of Yukio Caravaggio. Before them hangs a huge square canvas signed with the word Aphelion.
The painting depicts a black and white web of geometric shapes, interwoven without apparent meaning. "Speak plainly, brother," Caravaggio demands. Varzival replies that he sees nothing good in it. He knows Ukiyo is obsessed with this work, purchased from a rogue trader, and considers it a map of the firmament of being and a path to enlightenment. Varzival feels the danger radiating from the canvas, but Caravaggio merely smiles and utters, "Though even the blind may paint, only the brightest strokes shall survive." The vision dissipates. Varzival stands in the gallery, and behind him a melodic voice rings out. Bright they were, yet fettered by shadows. The captain turns to see a servitor in a burgundy tuxedo holding a pole. Upon the servitor's face is a gilded mask in the shape of a sun with a frozen smile. "How may I serve, my lord?" the gondolier asks. Varzival roughly asks what it wants, for they are on the 5th tier where there is no water. The servitor ignores logic, offering its vessel, and spouts poetic nonsense about eagles screeching lies and the cornice of oblivion. The captain orders it to report to the Alcazar Automatia for recalibration. "Most certainly," the servitor replies, but does not move. Varzival issues the order again. The servitor agrees, but continues to stand there. The captain turns away, deciding it is a malfunction, when suddenly the gondolier sings in a sweet voice, "Fate paints us rank without reason, but only the brightest strokes shall survive." Varzival freezes. He spins around and asks, "What did you say?" The servitor merely repeats the offer for a ride. A furious, blind rage washes over the captain. He sees his fist slam into the golden sun mask, shattering porcelain, bone, and circuitry, mixing them with meat. The blow is crushing. Varzival immediately steps back, suppressing his wrath, and thinks in horror that perhaps Caravaggio's demon has escaped. Blood pounds in his temples. He wipes his face and sees crimson trails on his palm. His nose has started bleeding. He looks up at the glass installation. The spiral of cubes has turned black.
Ennio Zan strides across the stone slabs of the hibernaculum, the hollow echo of his heavy ceramite sabatons rolling beneath the catacomb vaults. He does not remove his armor even here in the heart of the citadel, for the plate has long since become his second skin, and the integrated cogitators an extension of his brain. The very thought of separation from them evokes physical revulsion within him. The master is performing his 48th rotation, personally scanning each upright sarcophagus, peering into the faces of the sleepers through the transparent lids. Data floods his mind instantly: power flow, coolant balance, metabolic rhythms. But he intentionally slows the process, forcing himself to analyze every line with his conscious mind rather than his subsystems. This is his penance for the errors during transport. The armor crackles with machine code, reminding him that personality defects are unacceptable, and punishes him with an electric shock. Ennio configured it this way himself. He severed his pleasure centers and dialed his pain receptors to the maximum so that every discharge would serve as a reminder of imperfection. Zan halts before a specific container that has become the source of his anxiety. Here rests Miguel Rierson, the third victim of the transit, who perished a mere 9 seconds after internment. The youth's body looks serene, yet the biomonitors are going mad. Parameters pulse red, metabolism is absent, yet neural activity is flagged as intense and chaotic. The machine indignantly reports a conceptual contradiction. Ennio scans again, and the readings shift to deceased, but he senses a lie. The machine spirit of the capsule is hiding something. Reciting a binary psalm, the tech marine extends a writhing mechadendrite from his backpack and connects to the sarcophagus interface socket with a harsh click. Reality vanishes instantly, replaced by an abstract landscape of geometric forms against a backdrop of blue void. Zahn's noospheric avatar races through data blocks, attempting to locate the source of the anomaly, but suddenly the schematic howls. The virtual world twists into a vortex of razor-sharp edges, and a mad message flashes before his inner eye. Name, all. Designation, must. Age, fall. Birthplace, within. Potential, without. In that same second, he is attacked in reality. A massive electrical discharge, bypassing all fuses, spears through Zahn's body, forcing him into convulsions. This is no glitch, this is an assault. He tries to sever the connection, but the armor refuses commands. The mechadendrite is jammed fast in the socket, pumping streams of scrap code into his cogitator. Smoke pours from the armor's joints, arc lightning dances across the plates, and the suit's pseudo-muscles petrify, turning the power armor into a crushing prison. White noise shrieks inside his helm, drowning his consciousness in a storm of contradictory sensations, where sound has a taste and color inflicts pain. Through this chaos breaks an arrhythmic, destructive melody, resonating with something deep inside the tech marine himself.
No,
Zahn rasped, realizing the discord is already within him. He gathers his entire will into a fist, focusing on a single logical axiom: that which is impossible does not exist. This becomes his anchor in the ocean of madness. As his flesh blisters with burns, he transmutes the needle of logic into a mental spear and strikes back directly at the nexus between man and machine. The blow strikes true. The armor emits a groan of interface error and convulses. The mechadendrite tears from the socket in a fountain of sparks. The massive servo arms on Zahn's back begin to thrash the air wildly, smashing everything around him. The master is spun in place, the armor jerks, the system goes into purge, and darkness falls. The light returns just as suddenly. System initialization complete. Ennio comes to, checking his vocal modules. His voice sounds with a metallic grating. "The omniscia improves," he proclaims. Diagnostics show the armor functioning at 82%, but the scan of his organic components returns a critical result. The body is dying. The damage is irreversible. However, instead of fear, Zahn feels a grim satisfaction. He understands the machine will assume the burden of the weak flesh. The armor will sustain his life, and he will effectively transform into a thinking engine. The machine confirms his thoughts with a crackle of code. Ignorance equals heresy. Looking around, Ennio sees the consequences of his seizure. His berserk servo arms have pulped the adjacent sarcophagus, turning the body of an innocent youth into a bloody mash. Zahn registers this as a regrettable but low-priority loss. He turns his gaze back to Rierson's capsule, standing opposite. The instincts of an ancient human scream at him to destroy this container, to burn the anomaly before it wakes, but logic and faith in the omniscia prevail. "You will submit to analysis," Zahn says to the dead man. "Truth elevates all," and Ennio's armor thunders. "Knowledge equals power." Ennio decides that this deviation must be studied and subjected. Inspired by the horror he has endured, he feels a surge of power and begins to compose a new sublime symphony of code in his mind. For 6 days, Varzival Cervantes awaited this summons, inspecting the avenues lined with mirrored statues, until a woman in a skull mask approached him. The acolyte, dressed in black robes bound by chains, bowed low and announced in florid high Gothic that his presence was desired at the cathedral elegiac. Varzival, who disliked the affectation of obsequiousness and the gloomy atmosphere of this organization, replied curtly that he knew the way and set off along the soot-covered cobblestones of the elegiac path. On the way, he was hailed by apothecary Juan Borges, clad in a blue doublet with white stripes. It turned out he had been summoned as well. Varzival suspected that the elegy had invited the Medicae to testify against him, but aloud he suggested they walk together. They strode side by side, discussing the condition of the sleeping recruits. Borges admitted that Tecmarine Zan's strategy, despite the risk, had proven to be a salvation. Only 3 had perished. The apothecary expressed bewilderment regarding Zan's nature, but Cervantes advised him not to try and understand the logic of the gears. The black path led them to a subterranean lake hidden in the mist beneath the eastern sector of Canvolis. Varzival approached a structure resembling a gibbet and pulled the tongue of an iron bell. A mournful tolling rolled across the water. Soon, a gondola emerged from the haze, piloted by a skeletal servitor in a black cowl. Varzival tossed a ritual coin into the water, proclaiming that they sought the wisdom of the darkness. The boatman allowed them passage, and they drifted toward a cathedral with 10 spires resembling the tines of a thorned crown. Inside the temple, gloom reigned, dispelled only by 9 white candles on a chandelier. The 10th, black, remained unlit. They were met by a triumvirate of chaplain castigators in iron masks that concealed their faces, their arms crossed over their chests, gripping daggers. Borges was dismissed immediately, told he would not be judged. Varzival remained alone before an altar drenched in ancient blood. The head chaplain ordered him to step forward and place his hands upon the cold granite, fingers splayed. "Are you firm and true in service to the Codex of the Radiant?" the judge asked. "Now and always," Varzival replied. In that same instant, the 3 chaplains roared and brought their knives down upon the altar. The blades flashed with incredible speed, striking between the captain's splayed fingers, striking sparks from the stone. Without breaking the deadly rhythm, they began the interrogation, shouting questions about philosophy, aesthetics, and facts. Varzival answered without hesitation, staring straight ahead, knowing that any error would cost him his fingers. "How did your predecessor die?" the judges asked in unison. Varzival hesitated, and memory hurled him into the past. He stands once more in Yukio Caravaggio's quarters, together with 4 brothers. They have come to arrest the Knight Exemplar, but they are too late. Yukio, unarmed and unarmored, stands before an empty canvas and claims he has ascended. Reality around him cracks. He transforms into a vortex of light and darkness, and the painting vanishes. The slaughter begins. Varzival sees Chaplain Haas perish, half his face and body torn away, yet he manages to strike the daemon with his Crozius. Codicier Benedict is already dead, his flesh scattered across the cabin. Yukio, having resumed human form, lies against the wall, stunned by the psychic scream of the dying and Haas's blow. Vault Sergeant Turner wants to finish the traitor, but Varzival stops him. He decides to hide the Rhapsody's shame and orders the daemon bound in chains rather than destroyed. "He was betrayed," Varzival shouts in the present, staring into the slits of the iron mask. "Our librarian was seduced by a daemon.
Exemplar Caravaggio gave his life protecting his rhapsody. The daggers prick his fingers, drawing blood, but this is merely a warning for the hesitation. The judges accept the lie. The interrogation continues, and when asked about the security of the citadel, Varzival answers honestly that he senses a threat. The chaplains cease their dance of blades and deliver their verdict. Imperfect, yet fit for command. Suddenly, a voice speaks from the darkness behind the judges' backs. Someone unseen intercedes for the captain, asserting that he can be trusted, for he has discerned the dark shadow over the city. The chaplains, recognizing the speaker, retreat and appoint Varzival as temporary castellan of Canvolis. The officer is stunned. This is not his role, and where is Idris Glass? He has vanished, says the voice from the dark. His rhapsody concealed it until I discovered the absence. A warrior in white robe steps into the light, a paladin illuminant. Varzival recognizes the face. He has painted it countless times in his pictures. It is the pilgrim. The paladin looks at him with colorless eyes and speaks telepathically. I never doubted you would survive the reverie. My name is Satori, he says aloud, smiling slightly. But you and I have no need for names, do we?